It is a warm September morning in Geneva, 1898. The lake is still. The air smells of autumn and clean water. A woman walks along the path by the water, moving quickly, dressed entirely in black, a dark veil over her face. She has no guards, no entourage. No one around her knows who she is. She is 60 years old. She has not slept well. She rarely does. A young man is watching her from across the street. He has been waiting since early morning. He was supposed to be here for someone else entirely, a French prince who never arrived. But then a tip reached him, a whispered word, a name. He changed his plans. He crosses the street. There is a flash of movement, so fast she barely registers it. A sharp pressure against her chest, nothing more. She staggers slightly. A woman nearby reaches out to steady her. The young man runs. Sissy straightens up. She adjusts her gloves. She says she is fine. She walks to the dock. She boards the steamship for Montreux. She takes her seat. And then slowly she begins to fall. She has been stabbed through the heart with a sharpened metal file, so thin, so precise, that she did not feel it pierce her. The blade had compressed her heart, holding the wound closed just long enough for her to walk, to board, to sit. When they carry her back to the hotel and cut open her dress, they find a tiny mark no larger than a coin. Inside, the damage is catastrophic. She never regains consciousness. She dies that afternoon, still in Geneva, still in black, still carrying all the things she had never been able to put down. Her name was Elisabeth of Austria. The world knew her as Sisi, and this is where her story ends. But it is not where it begins. Go back 60 years. Go back to a castle on the shores of a Bavarian lake where a little girl is running. She is barefoot. She is climbing trees. She is riding horses at a speed that makes the servants nervous. Her name is Elisabeth Amalie Eugenie, born on Christmas Eve, 1837, the fourth of 10 children of Duke Maximilian of Bavaria. Her family calls her Sisi. Possenhofen Castle is not a formal place. Her father, Duke Max, is a wanderer himself, a man who plays the zither and drinks with farmers and takes his children on trips without warning. Her mother is kind but often overwhelmed. The children are left largely to themselves. Sissy grows up wild and free in a way that very few girls of her time and class are allowed to be. She rides every day. She writes poetry in notebooks she keeps hidden. She falls in love with the mountains, the lake, the open sky. She has no interest in court life, no interest in protocol, no interest in the careful, airless world of European royalty. She is 15 years old when everything changes. In the summer of 1853, her mother travels with Sissy and her older sister Helene to the resort town of Bad Ischl in Austria. It is a social visit, though not a casual one. The Emperor of Austria, Franz Joseph, 23 years old and ruler of the largest empire in Europe outside of Russia, is there to meet Helene. The plan, arranged by his mother Archduchess Sophie, is for Franz Joseph to propose to Helene. She is the right age. She has been prepared for the role. Everything is in order. And then Franz Joseph sees Sissy. He cannot take his eyes off her. He barely speaks to Helene all evening. 2 days later, he asks for Sissy's hand in marriage, not her sister's, hers. She is 15. She later wrote in her diary that she loved him, or thought she did. She also wrote this, if only he were not an emperor. 9 months later, she was one. Vienna in April of 1854. The streets are lined with people cheering as a glass coach carries the new 16-year-old empress through the city. Thousands of flowers, flags from every balcony, the greatest empire in Europe welcoming its new queen. Inside the coach, Sissy is crying. The Hofburg Palace is not a home. It is a machine. Every hour of every day is scheduled. There are rules about how she must sit, how she must walk, how she must eat, how she must greet visitors, how she must dress, how she must speak. There are rules about everything. And watching over all of it, watching over her, is her mother-in-law, Archduchess Sophie, a woman described by those around her as the only man in the Hofburg. Sophie does not dislike Sisi. She simply does not think Sisi is capable. She has a point in a cold way. Sisi has been raised for freedom, not formality. She does not know the ceremonies. She makes mistakes at official dinners. She cries in her rooms at night. But Sophie's response is not patience. It is control. When Sisi gives birth to her first daughter, Sophie names the child herself. When Sisi gives birth to a second daughter, Sophie takes that child too, moving the babies to her own wing of the palace, deciding their schedules, their nurses, their upbringing. Sisi is told she is too young, too unstable, too emotional to raise her own children. She is not allowed to be a mother. She is not allowed to be herself. She is allowed to be beautiful and silent and present at state dinners and nothing else. Franz Joseph loves her. He genuinely does. But he is also a man who has been trained since birth to serve the empire above everything. He does not know how to comfort her. When she weeps, he does not understand why. When she tells him she is drowning, he hands her a schedule. In 1857, their first daughter, little Sophie, dies of an intestinal illness at the age of 2. Sisi holds the child as she fades. She blames herself. She will spend the rest of her life blaming herself for that death, for all of it, for the distance, for the children taken from her, for the life she could not escape. She breaks down completely. The doctors call it nervous exhaustion. They send her to a spa in Madeira to recover. It is the first time she leaves Vienna without Franz Joseph. It will not be the last. Sisi comes back from Madeira thinner than before. And she decides, in the way that people who have lost everything else decide things, that there is one thing left she can control. Her body. She begins measuring her waist every morning. It is 50 centimeters. She keeps it there for decades. She eats almost nothing, surviving at times on clear broth and orange juice and raw meat pressed through a cloth for the juices only. She exercises for hours every day, parallel bars in her rooms, long walks that exhaust her companions, horse riding that terrifies her servants. She weighs herself every day. She is 5 feet, 7 inches tall. In her middle years, she weighs less than 50 kilograms. Historians who have studied her habits now recognize what was happening. It was anorexia, severe and lifelong. But to the court, to the public, she is simply perfect, impossibly beautiful. She sits for portraits looking serene. She carries herself like a woman carved from marble. The people adore her. Poets write about her. Other women envy her. She hates all of it. She stops sitting for portraits in her mid-30s. She will not be photographed again. She begins carrying a fan, holding it over her face whenever she appears in public. She does not want to be looked at. She does not want to be admired. She wants to disappear. In 1867, she uses her influence for the last major political act of her life. She pushes Franz Joseph to grant Hungary greater independence, creating the Austro-Hungarian Empire. The Hungarians adore her for it. She had learned to speak Hungarian herself fluently just to honor them. It is perhaps the only time in her life as empress that she feels useful. After that, she is mostly gone. She travels constantly. Greece, England, Ireland, Switzerland, North Africa. She moves so often that the court cannot keep up with her. She travels under false names. She refuses police protection. She hikes for hours in rough terrain, outdistancing everyone. She says she wants to travel the whole world until she drowns and is forgotten. She is not well. Everyone can see it. She speaks to mediums and psychics. She writes poetry full of darkness and longing. She tells Franz Joseph she thinks about death often. He begs her to come home. She boards another ship. January 1889. Rudolph is 30 years old. He is brilliant and progressive and deeply unstable. He drinks too much. He is estranged from his wife. He has written letters to the Pope asking for an annulment that never comes. He is heir to an empire he does not believe in, carrying a weight he cannot put down. On the 30th of January, in a hunting lodge called Mayerling in the Vienna woods, Rudolf shoots his 17-year-old mistress, Baroness Mary Wetzera, and then himself. He leaves a letter for his mother. In it, he tells her he loves her. He tells her he has to go somewhere he is afraid to go alone. He tells her Mary gave him the courage. Sisi receives the news at the Hofburg. She goes to Franz Joseph and tells him herself, because she cannot bear for him to hear it from a stranger. He weeps in a way she has never seen before. She does not weep. She stands very still. She dresses in black the next morning. She never wears anything else again. Something breaks in her after Mayerling that does not heal. She has always carried sadness. Now she carries something heavier. She believes she gave Rudolf her darkness, her instability, her unhappiness, that she passed it to him like an inheritance, blood to blood, and that his death is something she caused. She wanders after that with a desperation that has no destination. She visits spas and coastlines and cities. She gets a tattoo of a blue anchor on her shoulder at 51 in a harbor pub in a city no one remembers. She loses weight she does not have to lose. She says she is tired. She says it often. Franz Joseph keeps her portrait in every room. He writes to her every day when she is away. She writes back sometimes. She says she wants to be forgotten. She will not be. September 1898, the same morning we began. Sisi is 60 years old and traveling under a false name as she always does now. She has come to Geneva because it is quiet. She likes the lake. She has stayed at the Hotel Beau Rivage before. The young man waiting across the street is 25 years old. His name is Luigi Lucchini. He is an Italian anarchist, and he came to Geneva to kill Prince Henry of Orleans, a French pretender to the throne. But Henry canceled his visit. Lucchini is frustrated. Then someone tells him the Empress of Austria is in town. He has nothing personal against her. He does not know her. He has read about her in the newspapers. He decides she will do. He watches her leave the hotel. He crosses the street. He makes one sharp movement so fast that the people nearby do not understand what they have seen. He runs. He is caught within minutes. Sisi stands, Sisi walks, Sisi boards the ship. And then she falls. They carry her back to the hotel. They cut open her dress. The wound is barely visible. The doctor presses on her chest to restart her heart. Her eyes open once. They close. She dies at 2:30 in the afternoon. In Vienna, Franz Joseph receives the news that evening. He sits for a long time without speaking. Then he says this quietly to no one in particular. No one will ever know how much I loved that woman. They bring her body home to Vienna by train. Crowds line the route in silence. She is buried in the imperial crypt beside Rudolf. Lucchini goes to prison. He will hang himself in his cell 11 years later. The Austro-Hungarian Empire, the one she never wanted to rule, will survive her by only 20 years. It collapses at the end of the First World War, the war that begins when Franz Ferdinand, Rudolf's replacement in the line of succession, is shot in Sarajevo. A thread that runs, quietly, from that hunting lodge in Mayerling, from that morning in Geneva, all the way to the end of a world. It is late now, wherever you are. Somewhere in Vienna, in a palace she could not stand to live in, there is a museum built in her rooms. They kept her exercise equipment. They kept her diet records. They kept the scale she stood on every morning. They kept the portraits she refused to sit for again after the age of 32. They kept everything. She wanted to be forgotten. She is one of the most famous women in European history. Maybe that is the cruelest thing, that the woman who spent her whole life trying to escape is the one who never gets to leave. Sleep well.